It's my pleasure to introduce to you Tina Grosowski. She's the project coordinator for Central Massachusetts Tobacco-Free Community Partnership. And she's going to talk to you about not only stopping smoking if you smoke, but also keeping our young people from smoking. So please welcome Tina.
Thank you very much, Donna. It's a real pleasure to be here today, and I thank you very much for your coming today. It's great. As Donna said, my name is Tina Grosowski. Can you hear me in the back? Okay, great. And I'm from UMass Medical School, and I coordinate this program, the Central Mass Tobacco-Free Community Partnership. We work to reduce smoking and secondhand smoke throughout all of Central Mass, and we do that by providing community education and awareness, especially around the tobacco industry and how it has developed tactics to entice youth to use their products. And that's really another presentation, but I will weave a little bit of it into this presentation. And we provide resources around how to quit smoking, which is what this program is about. Even though I hope most of you are not smokers, some of you may have been smokers, and there's a lot in this presentation about ideas for behavior change. So even though this presentation is about quitting smoking, the ideas about changing behavior can kind of go across the board to just about everything, whether it's weight management or physical activity or any other kind of behavior change that you're interested in making. So this is kind of an interactive presentation. I thank the Uxbridge schools for filming it. Please feel free to raise your hand anytime, ask a question, and let me know if you want some more information. This presentation goes along with a booklet called You Can Quit Smoking, which I have up here on the table here. You're welcome to come up and get a booklet. In the back of the booklet are some little cards that you can use for sort of reminder cards. And we give out these little chip clips to hold them together with a magnet so you can put them on your refrigerator. I didn't get to my office this morning to replenish my chip clips, so if we run out, I can put some in the mail to Marcia. So let me get started with sort of the basic ideas. This is about a half-hour presentation at the most. And the main focus of this presentation is about providing some ideas to start thinking about quitting smoking. And there's kind of 4 steps to that. One is to look at your reasons why you would quit smoking. And again, if you're thinking about some other kind of behavior change, you want to think about what would be your reasons for making that behavior change. How to make a plan to quit smoking, because you can't be successful at quitting smoking unless you have a plan. As you know, many millions of people try to quit smoking and are not successful. It's a very difficult drug, which is the drug nicotine, which is what we'll talk about, which is in tobacco products, which is a very difficult drug to quit, and we'll talk about why that's true. So you have to make a plan, and then you have to put your plan into motion, and there's some steps to doing that and some resources that you'll need, which I'll talk about, and then how to become a non-smoker and make your life be smoke-free. We know most smokers have tried to quit many times before they quit, and sometimes it takes 6 or 7 tries, but that last try when you've actually quit would be your real success. And half of all people who've ever smoked have quit and been successful at it. So the first thing is you have to identify your reasons to quit for yourself. There's some across the board that I'll talk about here that are sort of generic for everybody. But most people need these reasons to motivate themselves to quit. And Barry filled me in and told me that he has been a successful quitter for the past couple of years, so might be shaking his head at some of this. And feel free to jump in if you want to. So the number one, these reasons are to quit are your health, which makes sense, and we'll talk about that, your family and your friends, money, which is a big incentive, big reason to quit smoking, especially these days with the price of tobacco, and any other reasons that you have. If you go to the doctor and talk to your primary care provider, the number one thing that the doctor will tell you is that quitting smoking is the number one best thing you can do for your health. And it's pretty obvious to all of us most of these days why that's true, but we'll talk about it a little bit. Because the health risks from use of tobacco are well documented, right? There's a whole industry, the tobacco industry, that is still working hard and spending lots of money to make lots of money, billions of dollars traded on the New York Stock Exchange, to get people hooked on nicotine and to keep them hooked on nicotine. And we'll talk a little bit about how they're still doing that to our youth and what towns can do to prevent that. So the many risks that I probably don't need to talk to you about specifically because you've lived long and healthy lives, it looks like, are the risks from tobacco use include heart disease, obviously many types of cancers, lung cancer being the most known one, but liver cancers, obviously cancers of the mouth and the throat. Aneurysms, there's a lot of new science around aneurysms, which, as you know, are blood clots that travel to the brain. And then the respiratory diseases, which are bronchitis or emphysema or chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, COPD, and then maybe some of you have friends who have this disease if they were smokers for most of their lives. And obviously many of them elderly in their 80s or 90s who, especially women who grew up in the 30s and 40s, right, when smoking was just getting started and was really popular. Those people are in nursing homes, and we're paying for that these days. So the latest science also shows that stroke is exacerbated by smoking. So your risk of stroke goes up at least 50% if you are a smoker. Obviously, also for women in the early childbearing years, there's many risks for smoking, including difficulty with fertility, and then difficulty carrying a pregnancy. We know about stillbirths, infants' deaths, and low birth weight. So, you know, this is a hard list to look at, especially when you're having a nice lunch, so I'm just going to keep going right through it, but I'm sure you know about it. So that's health reasons, okay? We also know that your family is really important in motivating people. We're talking about motivations to quit, okay? This young man with this beautiful little girl here is one of our ex-smokers. We have a program called the Ex-Smokers Hall of Fame. And we interview people who have quit smoking. We interview them to get information about what helped them quit smoking so it will help other people to quit. And so he quit, and one of his reasons for quitting was his daughter that had obviously recently been born. And many people report that that's a real motivator, you know, especially when they start having children or if they have grandchildren. So your family and friends will be glad when you quit smoking, when, you know, in your family. You're going to have a lot more energy and a lot more, live a lot longer and be a more active part of your family's life, and also your friends. And obviously you're going to reduce their risk of secondhand smoke. You all know what secondhand smoke is, right? Secondhand smoke is the smoke that comes off of a cigarette or is breathed out by someone who is a smoker. And we've all fought long and hard to eliminate secondhand smoke in the workplace and in public spaces. Now, some of you may be thinking along the lines of other tobacco products, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that at some point. But these are especially good reasons to think about quitting smoking. So I see you nodding. This is all making sense as I go along. So your family and your health are really important reasons to think about quitting. And then financial reasons. So especially these days, a pack of cigarettes in Massachusetts costs anywhere between $8 and $10, right? That's a lot of money. So you spend around $70, $80 a week on a package of cigarettes. That's over $3,500 a year. So that money, we try to talk to people who are smokers about using that money as a motivator to quit. What could you do with that money if you weren't using it to buy tobacco, right? Even for people who roll their own cigarettes, which is much cheaper, and I'll talk a little bit about that. That's pipe tobacco if you roll your own, or you have friends that roll their own, which is a much cheaper form of tobacco, but it's a lot more dangerous. It's got more nicotine in it, and when it burns, it produces a lot more carcinogens and the tars. So in the end, it's not better for you, even though it's cheaper. So with that $3,500, you could buy groceries, right? That's really important. Pay rent, especially for those of us who are on fixed incomes, and buy clothing, or do something fun. Actually, go to the movies, take a trip, visit family. That $3,500 can go a long way. So I know a woman who was an ex-smoker who grew up in Boston, and then when I interviewed her, she was working in Worcester. And she decided after she was a smoker for about 25 years to quit. What motivated her most was the money part, and she started saving the money every week in one of those great big Poland Springs water bottles like you have over there. So she saved up for 10 years. She saved up, and she got enough money. It was about $12,000 to go on this big cruise, took a huge trip, and that really sticks in my mind as a great, sort of example of what you could do with the money if you really persevere. So every week it was a real motivator to put that $10 into the Poland Springs bottle. So you have your health, you have your family, and you have financial reasons to quit, right? And those are real motivators. So now you have some reasons to quit. Now you got to think about making a plan. The first thing you got to do is pick a date, a quit date. And that date is going to be the date that you completely stop smoking altogether. This is an important date because making a plan is not like doing something on the spur of the moment, right? It's having a plan and sticking to it and doing the steps along the way that is going to make you be successful. So picking a date, then figuring out how to use the experiences you've had in the past to quit, and knowing what your triggers are. Barry and I were talking about one of his triggers was getting in the car, and we'll talk about that. There's many different triggers of the things in the environment that tell your brain that you want to have a cigarette, that you want to have some nicotine. You want to plan for the cravings, because that's what's going to happen when you start reducing the nicotine and then being ready for the challenges. So as we said, pick a quit date. You want to use your past experiences. Think about what you've done in the past. And if you started to smoke again, what made you smoke again? What was happening in your life? Many people tell me that they quit smoking for a couple of years, or maybe even 5 to 7 years, and then something happens that's stressful, like a family member passes away, or there's been a medical emergency, or there's been some emotional stress with the grandchildren or children or friends, and that's just enough to make people pick up a cigarette and I'll just have one tonight, with a glass of wine or with a cup of coffee or whatever. And then nicotine is so addictive that that's all it takes for the brain to feel that pleasure of nicotine again, and then the habit starts again, which is it's not really a habit, it's an addiction. So we talk about what could you do this time to make sure you don't start smoking again. And in the back of the booklet, there's a little piece of paper that helps you track some of this. But it's really helpful to write things down. And we're also going to talk about getting counseling, because the number one thing you can do to be successful at quitting smoking is to get some counseling, specifically from a trained tobacco treatment specialist. So triggers. Triggers are the things that tell your brain, I want some nicotine. The part of the brain that is the pleasure part of the brain is called the amygdala. You might remember back to your high school science class. That's the part of the brain that processes pleasure, and it doesn't matter what kind of, it can be sugar, chocolate, caffeine, cocaine, heroin, marijuana, or nicotine. It doesn't matter. It all goes to the same part of the brain, and the brain absorbs it as pleasure and tells the rest of the body what to do to get more of it. People that I've worked with who have been heroin addicts or cocaine addicts who are off drugs and are now completely drug-free and in rehab, or they're getting, their Suboxone treatment, but they're still smoking. And why are they still smoking? Because the nicotine is a very dose-responsive drug, is what we call it. It goes right quick to the brain, and the brain processes it really quickly, and your body gets the pleasure from it. And the tobacco industry knows that, and they fool around with the amounts of nicotine that they put in it, and they've been doing that for years and years. So that's what a long answer to what a trigger is. So in the environment, we have all sorts of triggers. Here's a list of what is in the environment and how your behavior goes along with that then every day to create patterns, right? Every day, to reinforce that. And we do it all the time, every day with lots of things, you know. So it doesn't really matter that it's nicotine we're talking about. You can talk about weight loss or exercise or, you know, just about anything else. So some common ones, you know, boredom or killing time, especially for elderly people, older people who are alone. I talk about that. I've been doing a lot of work lately in housing authorities. Do any of you live in is Uxbridge have a housing authority, public housing authority? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Are any of you from there? Any of you live in the housing authority here? Yes. Okay. So has Uxbridge Housing Authority gotten tobacco free yet? Are you allowed to smoke in your apartments in the
No, but they do.
No, but they do. They do. So they probably haven't gotten tobacco free. And that's something that we've been working on town by town by town. I've been working in Spencer and Charlton and Webster, in some of the big cities. That most of the housing authorities are going tobacco free across the state. And it's really difficult for some people who've been smoking all their lives. They're in their 70s, 80s. And now they can't smoke in your apartment. No one's telling you have to quit. But the housing authority is making the rules that you can't smoke in your apartment. And that's really providing some motivation to people to think about, well, maybe this is time for me to quit. So I've been doing some work in West Boylston, and there was a lovely woman, and she was 75, and I went there in February, and she'd been quit since November. And she'd been smoking for over 35 years. But this change that she couldn't smoke in her apartment was the thing that was going to motivate her to quit, and she could quit. So it's interesting what, you know, will motivate some people. She said, finally, I don't want to move. I don't want to have to go out to the corner in the wintertime, you know, and she was smart. So, and the interesting thing also was that people say, oh, you used to be able to tell when Mary was coming because she had a horrible hacking cough, you know, smoker's cough. Well, now she just had a little bit of a cough, and she was using a lot of lozenges, which we'll talk about. And she'd been quit for 5 months. So, and she talked about how boredom, you know, was one of the most difficult things for her because she had to figure out some other things to do when she was in her apartment. And that also helped to make some good changes, lifestyle changes in her life. So it was really exciting. So coffee breaks and stress is another one. Stress is an interesting thing. I'm not going to go into it too much, but there's two different kinds of stresses in life when you're talking about nicotine. The stress of everyday life, we all have stresses in our lives, right? This winter was particularly stressful, right? It seemed to go on forever. It was very cold. There was so much snow. I don't know about you, but I thought it was a pretty stressful winter. And then there's the stress of a nicotine addiction. What nicotine does to the body is that every time you take it into your system, it hypes up your heart rate and your blood pressure. That's what makes and causes heart disease. So if you do that over and over and over and over again over many years, that's what causes people to have heart disease. One of the things. Then when you have a smoke, when you smoke and you get the nicotine, then your brain goes, ah, right? And then a lot of people say that when they smoke a cigarette, they feel relaxed, right? If you've been a smoker, you know that. And every time you smoke a cigarette, then you start feeling relaxed. But that's not really relaxation. Relaxation is being with friends, right? Having a nice meal, walking perhaps, doing something socially that you like, going to the movies, or maybe even doing something like knowing how to do yoga or do meditation. That's real relaxation. What's happening when you smoke and your brain and you feel relaxed after you smoke is meeting the addiction. It's meeting the nicotine addiction. Your brain is going, because you got the nicotine. And that works until the next time. until half an hour later or an hour later, however much you are a smoker, and then you have the next nicotine craving, and then you have the next cigarette, and then you feel relaxed. So it's the self-reinforcing system that makes you think you're relaxed, but it isn't really relaxation. That's the addiction. So that's my little getting on my soap opera box about stress. So how to be successful is to track when you smoke, who you're with, what you're doing. That'll help you understand your triggers. Planning for cravings and withdrawals. When you withdraw from nicotine, what happens in the body is you have these normal symptoms of when you quit smoking. If any of you have been around someone who, when they quit smoking, this doesn't happen to everybody, but it happens to a lot of people. These are normal symptoms. A lot of people get a cough. If they've already have a hacking cough, it can get worse because you're reducing the nicotine. And all that phlegm that's been sitting inside your lungs, it's got to go somewhere, so it starts coming up, okay? Some people get bad headaches when they quit nicotine. They have trouble sleeping, so then they feel tired. They can feel irritable and emotional, or they can have, it can go to their stomach. You know, they can get stomach gas or stomach pains. These are normal symptoms of nicotine withdrawal and last for a couple of months, you know, until you get all the nicotine out of your system and you start having a normal, life. These are some tactics and strategies that we talk about to help people who are quitting smoking. We call them the 4 Ds. Delaying. Bye. Thanks for coming. Delaying and waiting out the urge to have a cigarette. That's the first one. Because you have to know that the urge or the craving for nicotine lasts for a couple minutes, sort of like a wave on the ocean. It starts low and then it comes up high and it's most intense and it comes back down. And if you can teach yourself to wait out that urge to have a cigarette, that's intellectually or in your brain, that's a first step, okay? It's not going to last forever. The second one is to do some deep breathing, breathing in slowly and breathing out slowly, 5 or 6 times. Drinking a lot of water instead of having a cigarette. You can't drink too much water. And then distracting yourself, figuring out something else to do or think about when you have the urge. Stress and being ready for challenges. This is sort of the stress of being smoke-free and figuring out what else you can do in your life. Obviously, talking to somebody or just as a friend or a neighbor is really important when you've quit, because you want to be able to tell people and talk to people during the day. You want to make sure you plan your day so you don't come up surprised by anything. You want to put more motion and activity into your life. We all need to do that, right? Getting up and moving and walking is really important for all of us, and especially the older we get. So learning to relax in a healthy way, maybe taking a stress management course, and getting lots of sleep. Being ready for the challenges, especially negative thinking, when it gets really difficult when you're trying to quit smoking, right? And that's why we recommend counseling, and I'll talk a little bit about that. But if you have negative thoughts and you're thinking, oh, I'll never be able to do this, or if I had a cigarette, I'd feel better, what you want to talk to yourself about is more positive we call sort of self-talk, and think, I want to be healthy, I want to lead a healthy life. If you think to yourself, well, everybody else is smoking, you know, you might want to sort of take a second thought about that. Is that really true? Everybody else is smoking? Obviously, today, we just did a sort of survey around the room. Most people are not smokers today in 2015. In America, United States, only about 85% of people, adults, are smokers these days. If you think, well, I'm young, I could smoke for a long while. Barry was probably in that situation. He was a young guy. He could have smoked for 20 to 25 more years. But what he said to himself is, I want to lead a healthy life. I want to be here for my family. I want to be here for my grandchildren. I want to be leading a healthier life. And why am I putting myself through this? When things get difficult, we all say that to ourselves, right? Why am I putting myself through this? And the reason is because you say to yourself, I want to live a healthy life. I want to be here for a long time. So trying to talk back to your negative thoughts. The other challenge is being around other smokers. There's nothing like somebody else who's a smoker to make a friend, right? If you don't even know somebody and you are a smoker and you go outside and you meet somebody else and have a smoke, you're an instant friend. And that can be very seductive because your whole social life can revolve around people who are smokers. So you want to make sure if you live with someone who's a smoker, you don't want people leaving their cigarettes around, you don't want people teasing you about it. And if you live with someone, you might want to ask them to quit too. So you want to line up some support to put this plan into motion. You want to decide on whether you're going to take any medications, which is really important, whether you're going to get nicotine replacement therapy, which is the NRT, which can come in a patch, or lozenges, or gum, or nowadays they make an inhaler. Or you want to get a prescription medication, you cut down and make your world smoke-free. So you want to talk to your healthcare provider, because nowadays in Massachusetts, almost all insurances will cover the cost with a prescription of the nicotine replacement therapy or the prescriptions. So that's really important. So you talk to your primary care provider and get a prescription for these medications. Then you want to get some counseling and support, because you're going to be twice as likely to be successful at quitting if you get counseling and get the medication. Some people can quit cold turkey. Barry is an example of that. I was an example of that. Most people cannot cut down and quit cold turkey. It's very difficult. So the 800 number is the Massachusetts free quit line, where you have a trained tobacco treatment specialist on the other end of the phone. And I'll leave some of these resources here with Donna. And then you can get the telephone support. So once you decide on whether you're going to get medication or whether you're going to get prescriptions and get support, that makes you twice as likely to quit and quit for good. Cutting down is also really important. If you're a pack-a-day smoker, every cigarette has between 1 milligram and 2 milligrams of nicotine in it. So if you're 20 cigarettes in a pack, right, that's almost 30 milligrams of nicotine. So if you're going to cut down from that, you want to start cutting down from 20 a day to maybe 15 a day, maybe 10, and then 5. So by the time your quit date comes, you're only smoking 5 or 6 cigarettes. That's really important. You want to make your home smoke-free, get rid of all your cigarettes in your car, your purse, etc. Some people worry about weight gain. Most people gain 5 to 6 pounds when they quit smoking, but once you're completely smoke-free, then you can work on reducing it and losing that weight. So you want to be active and put more activity into your life. I'm sure you've talked a lot about that here at the Senior Center, so I don't need to lecture you about that. Here's just some examples about, taking an aerobics class or a yoga class, or exercising at home with a tape or a DVD. And then eating simpler meals, especially if you're worried about weight gain, but putting a lot of simple snacks, healthy snacks into your diet, eating less red meat, processed food, and cheese. Those are all simple tactics to combat weight gain. And then don't forget to congratulate yourself. If you're a smoker and you've gone for a day without a cigarette, that's a big milestone. Then, maybe 3 days go by and you've been successful. Each one of those is something to celebrate. And don't give up. If you relapse and you start smoking again, you pick a new quit date, you talk to a counselor, and then you put the plan into motion and look at what happened. What happened when you started smoking again, and start thinking about what you could do differently again. And maybe it's just a matter of calling the counselor, because last time you didn't do that. Getting support and help is really important. So the 800 number is 800 Quit Now. There's also a website called Make Smoking History. I see you have some really nice computers here. You can get a lot of free information on the website, Make Smoking History, which is the state website. And all the information that I talked about today is on that website. Here's an example of the website. There's also other computer websites for people who've quit smoking. Some people quit smoking because they want to have their pet be healthy. So this website, Becoming an X, you can go online, talk to other people who are doing what you're doing. So the Smokers Helpline is free, and the books are up here free, and there's also some other little postcards with some quick tips on it. You've been a wonderful audience, and you're so thoughtful. I can see you all thinking about this. Any questions? Any more ideas?
Don't smoke.
Don't smoke. That's a great idea. So let me talk just for a minute about youth and kids in the tobacco industry. So you probably heard about electronic cigarettes, right? Electronic cigarettes are the new thing. What's an electronic cigarette? It's a little tank that has a cartridge, a battery in it, and a little cartridge of nicotine. The nicotine is in a substance called polypropylene glycol. So is it better for you than smoking? Combustible cigarettes, we call it traditional combustible cigarettes. Well, yeah, because just about anything is better for you than combustible cigarettes. It doesn't have tobacco in it, so there's nothing burning. It's just the nicotine that you're inhaling with some of the vapor, which is called polypropylene glycol. It's not water. The nicotine is in a substance that's sort of like vegetable oil. Many people say that they've quit smoking and are using electronic cigarettes. That's a good thing, but what they're fooling themselves if they think that they've stopped the nicotine, addiction, because what's in them is nicotine. The tobacco industry makes them, okay? They've been buying them up, and they put their own labels on them. And do we trust the tobacco industry to tell you the truth about what's in a product? No, we know that, right? When the master settlement, which was in 1998, the attorney generals, which one of them was from Massachusetts, remember Scott Harshberger, they sued the tobacco industry in 98. It's called the master settlement, and that's where they got all the money that's supposed to be coming to the states. And part of that agreement was you couldn't advertise tobacco on TV anymore. Remember, you used to be able to, we all grew up with TV, tobacco ads all over the television, right? Billboards, you don't see those anymore. They can't advertise in billboards. So electronic cigarettes are not considered a tobacco product. So now it's like the Wild West again. They can advertise on television, they can advertise on billboards, they can advertise in magazines. But the other thing is that, so they're not susceptible to all of the regulations that are in place. They're not regulated, which means that the FDA has not approved them, which means that any child can buy an electronic cigarette unless a town or a city has put in a local ordinance to prohibit the sale of electronic cigarettes to youth. So you can go down here to the mobile station if you're 12 years old, come walk down from the middle school and go into the mobile station and buy an electronic cigarette. If they don't have a local ordinance in town, and I'm not sure about Uxbridge, but I don't think they've updated their regulations to include electronic cigarettes. So that's something that towns can do to get kids not to be hooked on electronic cigarettes. Smoking rates for kids are going way down because they have been taught and taught and taught, about smoking and how bad it is for you. But they think electronic cigarettes are safe. They don't think that it has nicotine in them, that is addicting. And they can go on and use regular combustible cigarettes, or they smoke these little flavored cigars with flavors like the electronic cigarettes. You can buy the electronic cigarettes with flavors like bubble gum, cotton candy, pina colada, gummy bears, strawberry, grape, and that's what the tobacco industry is marketing to kids nowadays. So I was just up at the State House up in Boston yesterday, not the State House, at the Salt and Still building, because the Attorney General, the new Attorney General, Maura Healey, is trying to put into regulations statewide that the sale to anyone under the age of 18 would be prohibited. Because we tried to get that passed with the legislators over the past couple of years and they wouldn't pass it. We're trying again this year. But she's come in, she's young, she's energetic, and she said, well, I'm going to put it through as a regulation. So there was a big hearing yesterday in Boston. And a lot of people who own stores, they're called vape shops, maybe you've seen some of them, that sell all these electronic cigarettes and the vaping machines, were there because they wanted to make sure that their voice was heard. But there was also a lot of us activists to make sure that we were telling her that it's a good idea and we really want to see it implemented. So if you have grandchildren, whether it's in Uxbridge or Northbridge or Webster or up in Worcester or Fitchburg. Who was the young woman? I saw her back there. Your daughter. You might want to have a chat with her. Have you heard about these new electronic cigarettes? Have you heard about flavored cigars? Because that's what kids are using. That's what they're getting hooked on. They might call it smoking sweethearts. A friend of mine was driving her young daughter in the back of the car. She was 12, 13. And the girls in the back seat were talking about smoking sweethearts. And this friend says, what are they talking about? You don't smoke sweethearts, you know. And she listened, and that's what they were talking about. That's how they think about it, you know. Adolescents think differently than we do. Their brains aren't developed yet. So ask your grandchildren about it. And that's why they get hooked, because, and if you start smoking when you're an adolescent, 11, 12, 13, which is when many of us start smoking way back in the day, it's a lot harder to quit because your brain is still growing and the nicotine starts adhering to the brain as it grows, and it literally starts forming a pathway of addiction, the molecules. And that's the science we know from MRIs and CAT scans now. You know, that's the science that we know. So the tobacco industry is still trying to hook, hook people on nicotine. And that's what they told us back in the settlement, where we looked at all the documents that they had to reveal. And one of the statements in the tobacco documents was, we want lips. We want mouths. Young people's mouths is what they said. Because that's how you get them hooked. And the longer you can get them hooked young and then keep them hooked. So ask your grandchildren about it. If you're an activist, you can go check with the Board of Health. See what the regulations are here in Uxbridge and see if they want to update them to include electronic cigarettes. So thank you. You've been really wonderful audience and really thoughtful, and thanks for your attention, and I appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Tina. That was very interesting. I have a 14-year-old grandson, and I'm going to speak to him. So, you know, think about your grandchildren and open a conversation with them. Thank you again. We're pleased to have you here today. And thank you all for listening.
That's a good way of looking at it. I know.